Howdy, everyone, or should I say, Uncle Howdy. That's right. I guess that's how we're starting. So this is Flurry Sports coming to you with a new series we're going to be doing, which is fantasy booking. I think we're going to call it Ringworm. I think it's going to be a mix of we're going to have a series of fantasy booking. I also think the ringworm aspect of really digging into either potential storylines on the fantasy booking end or some potential breakdowns of matches. That's what I really like to get into, and breaking down matches very closely, measuring what those matches mean. So that could be a subset of this, but this fantasy booking series, feel free to comment below any fantasy booking elements you'd like to see play out, how WWE should book this, should have booked something else. No, it's not a new concept, but I think we're going to have fun with it. I also think there's kind of an appetite right now for how would you book current things happening in WWE, because in the Vince McMahon era, I do think a lot of the fantasy booking was like, how the hell did they fuck that up? And now WWE has so many options, so many ways to go that could actually be good, right? So slicing up, how would you portion out all this great talent, all this great time that WWE now provides us in a way that fulfills some of these storylines we're looking at? And we're starting with one that I would say the appetite is dimmed on. I would say that this is a story that I think we want WWE to do, but I haven't heard anyone with confidence say, yeah, WWE is really going to knock this out of the park. I am talking about the Wyatt Sicks. And the Wyatt Sicks, I'm going to get into a second the history of that, what led us here. But for this today, first off, this is our first one. If you could subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. It's the last mention of this. But as we crack into this, my goal for this video is to explain to you how we got here, where I think they could and should go next, and why I think they should do that. I might touch on a little bit where I think they are going, if that differs from what I would do or what I think they should do. But we're really going to try and focus on my fantasy elements. By the way, I'm going to get some things wrong. And that's going to be part of it. By the way, fantasy booking, that's okay. I pre-recorded this and already screwed up the months of the year. So I was like, can't wait to see them in January. And it was July. So things like that will happen. I thank you all for riding with me, hearing this out. And without further ado, how did we get here with the Wyatt Sicks? Now, this is a story that has to start, unfortunately, with the untimely passing of Bray Wyatt. When we talk about Wyndham Rotunda, character name in WWE, Bray Wyatt, I think it is a story of unmet potential, but also I don't know if he often gets enough credit for one of the examples I can think of where we were in no matter what. Like, I don't know if every storyline with Bray had to be a hit because we appreciated, and I certainly did, the swings, right? I loved Bray in a lot of his versions. I loved him especially in his cult leader Bray. I would say that is often people's go-to, but I don't think I've ever had a character I've loved as much as Firefly Funhouse Bray, because that is only a wrestling thing. If WWE was doing now what they were then, and we had this in-ring product that was met to snuff, if we had more confidence where the booking was going, if we knew that it wasn't essentially just about filling time on TV and like Bray was going to get the support, I think that initial run could be one of the greatest ever. And the fact that that happened in that era of WWE, I don't think gets enough credit. Like, yes, somehow he was booked to lose to Goldberg. Like, we can go down the rabbit hole, and many other people have, so I won't hear today, of what went wrong with Bray in his first run and even what went wrong when he returned. But I think what I want to touch on today is in Bray's passing, I think it says so much that we still want more of his character, of anything tied to him, and his ideas. Like, he was going in such creative directions that we don't get a lot of in WWE. And because of that, I hope we can come in this video. And my goal for this is, I know we're nervous about this being really spooky and lame, but we're not getting a lot of this in other spots. WWE has done things much worse, even in current times, bad storylines with much worse intent behind it. If this storyline comes across to honor the ideas and character of Bray, even if they do it in a way that is messy, well, they're trying to get a honestly messy character off the ground and a messy set of characters. So I think they have a hard challenge, but it, you got to honor Bray with what he gave you. So I think taking this very obtuse but full of potential idea and running with it is what they got to do. And so I hope we can give them a little bit of credit. And for you playing along at home, think about how you would book this, because this is one of the ones where I was like, should they even book it? But I think they should, because to tie into the Wyatt Six, it is this idea that Bray was very clearly heading in this direction, it seems, where in his last feud with LA Knight, the last match he had, no, dude, pitch black match, rest in peace. He and LA Knight go off the stage, big, really safe, going to a pants, really safe, but spooky fireworks go off, and Uncle Howdy's there, and it seems to be 6 puppets or characters uh surround Bray and Uncle Howdy and LA Knight, as that's kind of the end of that segment. So we're alluding there, and in several vignettes beforehand, Uncle Howdy's promos mentioning a group, and most nobly, and I think where this idea had the most buy-in, when Bray returned, we get flashes through the crowd of different wrestlers in these Wyatt Six gear. So Wyatt Six is just referring to, a lot of people have tied them back to, these are going to be characters that represent what were puppets on the Firefly Funhouse. So those being Husky the pig, Mercy the buzzard, Abigail, Sister Abigail, Ramblin' Rabbit, and the 6th character could be Uncle Howdy, could be a new character, and that's where it's going to get a little, for today, tough. We know the list that is rumored to occupy the Wyatt Six. We don't know what characters they're going to be implementing, but we do think they're going to tie into things that Bray has done before. Some people have speculated, are they going to represent those characters? Or are they going to represent different personas Bray had? Is someone going to be the Fiend? All these things, is it going to be 6? Now the rumors it's going to be 6 plus Uncle Howdy played by Bo Dallas. What we know is, and this is why I wanted to do this video, this is happening. This is for sure happening. I think they should do it. I know the buy-in right now is a little lukewarm, but we had the awesome documentary WWE produced about Bray and his legacy. And at the end, we got a very clear nod to Uncle Howdy's happening. Bo wants to carry this on. He has a new, or maybe not new, but we haven't seen this attire. It seems like that was very much the point of it, is that we were going to do something with this. And since then, in this spring, we've seen many vignettes pop up, QR codes, very similar to when Bray was returning, and alluding to this faction, this group, now very openly called the Wyatt Six. They have a Twitter account. But so this group's happening. And this group's vignettes, I would say, boil down to, we are a group of people who've been underrepresented, underutilized, underappreciated. The only one who appreciated us is gone now, alluding to Bray. But he brought us together. I think could be Uncle Howdy, but I think still alluding to Bray. And now we're going to make people pay for not only underappreciating us, but underappreciating him. So I think we're going in a direction where basically this group, and I think making people nervous because it sounds a little bit like retribution. They're not getting the credit they deserve. That they are not getting the push in wrestling terms that they feel like they have earned at this point. But I think most crucially, and what I'd be most into is that storyline tagline of, we are not being treated the way that Bray would have treated us. Like, Bray saw us for who we are, saw our value, and now that he's not gone, we're going to try and make this work without him. We're going to give him the honor and respect that he deserves by, coming in and, I guess, wreaking havoc. So that seems to be where we're at. Now, rumors have identified the potential Wyatt Sicks, and I'm going to use these characters today because I think it's realistic. I also think it's more fun to think of what you would do with WWE's toolbox than buying new tools. So the rumors are that Uncle Howdy will be played by Bo Dallas. And then our Wyatt Sicks include Nikki Cross, formerly of Sanity fame and been off WWE for a while. Joe Gacy from NXT, Dexter Loomis, who had been on the main roster, but most famous for his stalker-like character in NXT. Joe Gacy's character, also kind of a creepy mastermind, a lot of comparisons to Bray Wyatt in his time in NXT, and especially before that on the indie scene. Eric Rowan, obviously member of the Wyatt family, returning to WWE, presumably, according to these rumors. And then Alexa Bliss seems to be the obvious one. She's been tied this whole time because of her former stint as Sister Abigail. So those would be our technically Wyatt 7 because it'd be the 6 and then Uncle Howdy. I think that makes sense. I'll talk on this first, which is now we're into the booking piece. So how would you book this group coming in, making good on these vignettes, coming in the WWE? Well, what is their goal? I would talk first about the selection, which is I am most nervous about Gacy and Loomis because, and I guess you could put Cross in there, but I really enjoy Nikki Cross. I think she's done a wonderful job in this type of character. So I'm a little less nervous there, but you could probably like tie her into this point, which is those three are here because they're spooky. I don't think they were chosen because of their tie to Bray. I think with Rowan and Bliss, I think. Oh, and sorry, I'm miscounted, which is kind of an important point with all character. And then rumors that is Braun Strowman going to be involved in some way, so that would make it possibly the Wyatt 7. But for now, we're going to say that he won't be part of the initial package, so we'd have the 6. So, but I say his name because if he were involved, he obviously was part of the faction while Bray was in there. Same with Alexa Bliss, who played the Sister Abigail character while Bray was the Fiend. Obviously, the same with Rowan. And though we never saw Bo revealed as Uncle Howdy, it's very much been revealed since. And so that tie-in as well, especially being his real life brother. So you've got half of this group essentially being connected to Bray in some way, and the other half being, well, who can we get to fill up this spooky roster? And that's where I think you have to prove to fans right away what is the goal of this group. Because are you doing this just because you felt like you had to? Like, don't do that. I want this idea to happen. I want us, and I think this is such a cool opportunity to honor Bray. And I don't think you get this opportunity often in wrestling to latch onto an idea people want to see succeed. And so I think they need to do it. I think they should do it. But if you are doing this without a payoff in mind, or like, well, we knew how we were going to advertise because we're going to do the QR code just like Bray did. We've got all these people, and are these people spooky? Well, great, but like, why them? And why? Because this is a storyline. Why would Bray have picked them? So maybe he picked spooky people. Maybe that was his thing. He's got a spook bias. That could be it. But I think that will be the groundwork right away. Now we start this booking with my goal very clearly for the Wyatt Sicks, which is to get these people over. I think that has been the vignette and the story. I also think that's the wrestling meta simple aspect of it of, hey, we are not valued and used. So if more people value us and we are used more, then we have accomplished our goal. So I guess that on one hand is simple, but why I think they could go that route and it would feel pretty genuine is I think you should really tie into the story of, here's what I don't want. I think the the similar version of this, but I don't think it'd be as fun, is we are doing this because it's what Bray was going to do, which I think is true and honest, but I think you're missing the why behind he was going to do it. So you got to give me that in a different way. So I think now your why becomes to honor him. I also think we play around with maybe the McGovern, maybe it's obvious, but I think we pretty early doors and then throughout this run get into, is this what Bray would have wanted in a lot of aspects? And so I think to make that happen, it can't be as simple as, well, he wrote this down on a piece of paper and now I went and grabbed these 6 people and we're here. I think the tie-in has to be, not only do we want to be valued and used more, but we want to show that Bray deserved that too. And maybe getting into what I hope for this storyline is a pretty deep element, but in Bray's return, I think it was the best element he hit on, which is I think he wanted to be better than this and move in character, right? And move past the dark side of himself and different things. And I think this group thinks the only way to get these missions accomplished and to get their point across is to go to that dark side. And I think we need to see a story of accepting that and accepting those pieces as part of ourselves, but also getting to the place of eventually, maybe tipping my hat a little bit here, but eventually letting go of that. But are you letting go of Bray in a way when you do that? So I think there's a really cool emotional story to do here. Now, how do you do that in the ring? Which also, by the way, the story of Bray's career. This is where I think it's fun, and I think you could do something with it, which is, I think the temptation will be to come in and just, this group, like I mentioned, wreaks havoc. They just storm or whatever, and I've got 2 big pieces that I'm sticking to today. This group's face, they are like what, like I'm okay with them being misguided, but this group will be hard to get to work when we're cheering for them. I think it'll be incredibly hard and maybe impossible if it's like, and now we're rooting against this tribute act. Like, why would you do it that way? We want to root for them. We want to root for Bray. Let us do that. Maybe you could make the argument we'll root for them no matter what. I think that's certainly true to some respect, but also don't force them to be heel. I think there is a version of this character that is dark and twisted, but is rooted for. And so I think let's start there and let's have fun with that. I think point 2 to that I'm also like, that this is what this group is. This group wants to accomplish things in WWE. I think they have a nice excuse by tying in the Bray didn't get the recognition because of these demons he was fighting, and now because of our demons, us too. So I think a piece of this has to be, yeah, we're going for belts. We're going for things in WWE. We have goals, mini storyline to mini storyline, besides what Bray sometimes struggled with, which is, my goal is self-actualization, which, how do you measure that and put on a match about that week to week? So I think the goals of this group being to show that each of these members is dangerous and is worthy of our appreciation and was worthy of the trust and respect Bray put in them by their success in these matches and by their success in these storylines is important. So I think we could, in real life, get a shenanigans right away where we just go straight into a recruitment angle with Braun. I'm going to try and avoid that for a bit. I'm going to have Braun in mind, but that's not where we're starting. Here, in my version of events, we are starting after SummerSlam, and I would start us on the Raw after SummerSlam. I think we get a vignette there. And in my version, LA Knight beats Logan Paul. We're starting with an LA Knight storyline. And I would have it be a QR code that appears. If you could have this, like, LA Knight always wears a jacket. If his jacket could somehow have a QR code on it that he doesn't notice, like maybe it's made out of rhinestones. I, again, don't know if that's possible, but something to the effect of like LA Knight is getting across this vignette without knowing about it. Perhaps the mic he's holding has it on it. They've done something similar to that to Pavor. Perhaps he notices something backstage and he's the first to catch it because he's been through this. It could be as simple as like White Rabbit playing, cutting off his music momentarily if you want to go really avant-garde. But I think you have something where a message is sent, obviously related to LA Knight, and I would just have that message say he would be proud. And I think that sets us up. Maybe he would be proud, and so are we. And that sets us up, tie into LA Knight. And then we go, pardon me, to the SmackDown after SummerSlam, where LA Knight is addressing his win. And in the midst of this, I think for sure you get a White Rabbit to play. And I think we end the show full on recreation of Bray's return to WWE. I think we do the same door. I think we do the lantern. And for me, I would have everyone kind of come out in costumes in different pieces because I think some of the fun of this is revealing who people are. But I would have Bo come out not in costume. I think maybe have him initially appear in full Uncle Howdy. But and you'll see why in a second, but I want Bo to make this appearance. He's got the lantern. He's slowly joined by all these other features of the Wyatt Sicks, and we get that moment of like they're here and they come into the ring. I think we have them take off their masks because it'll just be obvious who people are. One from Rumor, and two, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross are like 5 foot. So we're going to have some pretty obvious, like, how do you hide Eric Rowan? So I think that moment where they all reveal themselves, and I think we get a moment where it's LA Knight and Bo, and here he takes off his Uncle Howdy mask, and I think we get a simple short promo from Bo, which is just that I'd have a hug right away, and I think that's really creepy in its own right. But I think we have a promo from Bo that said, "Look at everything he gave you. Look at everything he gave us." And I think we have him say, "What a shame it could be taken away." And then I think we have a moment where LA Knight thinks they're going to attack. And then I think we just have Bo pull it back and say, "We're not going to do it that way. Not unless you make us." It's not what he would have wanted. And then I think that's where that segment ends. I think we get a big setup. I think we tie the lines back to what happened with Bray and LA before that storyline concluded. And I think we get a tie into what I thought was the most compelling part of Bray's character upon his return, which is we're trying to be better. There's a temptation here again to come right out of the gate and we just attack people. And we're here, we're sending a message. I don't want them to be heels. And honestly, I just think there is a more nuanced path that we could take here. So we're going to try and do that for this storyline booking. So we are building up to Money in the Bank, post SummerSlam here. So we are building up to, like I said, the timeline is what always gets me. Bash in Berlin is the next pay-per-view here. We've got a couple small stops into what we are definitely building to here, which is Survivor Series. So I think with this group, another logistical challenge is you just have so many of them. So I think in the coming weeks of SmackDown, here are things I want to happen, not in any particular order scripted out, as I'm going to have some things later. But I think we get vignettes from each of them. In my view, each vignette has Bo, I think and I think he's got amazing acting chops, which I think people sometimes forget. I think our first one is just Bo, but I think in the weeks that follow, I would like Bo to do, he can't land on what Bray was. And I think that becomes clear. I want to see Bo. I want to see Bo basically going through the different gimmicks. Like I would like to see start out with like just Bo, and it's very clearly an homage to Bray's return promo. I think then we get into uh Bo appearing as the cult leader Bray. And I think that could be a promo where we hear more from Rowan. And I think from Gacy, I think that could be cool of like, and I'll touch on this in a moment. I'll actually loop back to that because we'll have those two there with Bo when he's cult leader. I think we have Bray or Bo playing Bray when he was the Eater of Worlds, and I think that's where we introduce Dexter and Nikki, and then we have Bo. And this being right before their next big conflict at the pay-per-view with LA Knight, where I would have Bo doing Firefly Funhouse, and that is where Alexa is involved. Now, my goal for like a group with this many people is it's going to be hard not to shoehorn them into faction warfare right away. Honestly, I don't think there are any factions immediately that pique my interest. I think you need to build that and give them, because you're missing that otherwise. Like to have this many people in a group, there's a lot of fun things there, but honestly, even just like with the genders at play, are you going to do big matches? Are you with just the men in the group? Are you going to have the, Alexa and Nikki go into tag action right away? I think they'll be tempted to do that, and I have feelings. I'm sure you do too about the WWE Women's Tag Division, but they'd make sense there. So, do you just go the group route? I'm going the. We have individual goals. We're tied into this together, and I think kind of to, because I think Bray's core concept is the fireflies, right? Like he's a lantern. He draws people to him. I think Bo is getting that of like, these people are drawn, but I think the temptation will be, do I lead these people down a path that benefits them, or do I lead these people down a path that more so benefits my goals and me, even at their detriment? So I think that'll be what they're kind of playing off of. But let's talk about these promos first. And let's start with why LA Knight. I think the clear one being it was Bray's last opponent. It's the one he's got the most clear tie to still on the roster. I like the idea of immediately getting them in a title scene. I think that's what you have to give it importance or we will relegate it right away. So I think, yes, it adds pressure to this storyline, but I think there will be natural pressure. And I just think it'll be a storyline to be too easy to kind of backseat because audiences don't always want to engage with the spooky, weird stuff. So kind of make them and show them why they should want to engage with it and should want to expect more from these personalities and members of the Wyatt Sicks. So I think in the first one back, I think we get a very earnest promo from Bo. And I think he's got to explain three things. I'll have some lines here that I think he should mention, but the three things I think he's got to share is why are the Wyatt Sicks back now? Why is he Uncle Howdy / like where was that storyline going? And I mentioned earlier, like you don't want to just be like, we're doing this because we were going to do it anyway. But you can give us like, we never got to hear Uncle Howdy's motivation. So what is Bo's motivation? I think that can be kind of the take back too of like, listen, I miss my brother and like this is a huge piece of my motivation. And then I think 3, what's next? Like where are we going? And I think that involves LA Knight. I think for this first one, I wouldn't necessarily have LA Knight and Bo come face to face. I listen, part of this is it's spooky. So honestly, I think this in-ring segment ends with LA coming down, and I would say lights go out and Bo's gone, and LA doesn't get his answers this week, and we have to wait future weeks for those interactions. So I think the reasoning that this group is back, and this is how I would like it communicated, is I essentially think Bo communicates that like he wanted to first come out and just thank people for like waiting. And I think again that ties back to Bray's return promo. I think the Fireflies will be in full force. I hope that right away the reaction is there and strong, especially if you do a really awesome homage the week before to that return. I think recreating that so play by play will be fun, and I think it could be a really cool idea. I think you start by thanking them in that way. I think being honest where he's been at into a dark place, and I think in this first section where he's talking about why the group is here, I think he speaks to, and this would kind of I want to be their driving force, which is just inaction was not an option. I think they feel called. And I think Bo is going to explain it as like, we feel called to Bray. We feel called to what he thought we were capable of. I think in weeks to come, we play with the idea, or were they called to you? Like, are you using this tie and this connection to Bray to manipulate, to do something maybe he wouldn't? And not intentionally. I don't want Bo to be revealed as a big bad. I don't want Uncle Howdy to be the secret villain all along. I sincerely think that where that story was going, and this goes in the Uncle Howdy piece, is Bray tried to heal and got to heal, but Bo didn't. Bo didn't have that same love, that same fan base support, and him and Bray never got to it in the ring. Like, be a factor, be together. And that's what Bo wanted. I think the push here is Bo more than anything. Uncle Howdy was all the dark pieces of him. And he just wanted Bray to acknowledge that those dark pieces were what allowed them to succeed. And I think this, could be proven wrong later. But I think for now, that's what Bo thinks is we're tying into these dark parts because you have chosen to ignore us otherwise. Like the light. Hold on, I got to check my notes here. The light wants to erase the shadow, but shadow cannot exist without the light. So I think what I'm going for there, and one, I made it vague on purpose because it seemed like a like Bray thing to say, but I essentially think the irony is that they need this approval, they need this value to exist, but as much as the light wants to, and by the light I mean the attention, the organization, those in power, they want to stamp out these kind of ideas, these kind of dark tendencies in these characters. The light is what makes the shadow. They are going to a dark place because they need to. So I think Bo kind of taps into that, and I think he says this group has more potential than anyone out here, and we are going to show that in the weeks to come. You will see how close these Fireflies can get to the sun. And I think we play with the idea that they know they're going down a dark, dangerous path, but they really feel like they need to. And they feel like that it would be where Bray would have taken them. So now LA Knight, and I think the tie-in here that I think was really cool, and LA Knight did such a good job in these promos when he was with Bray that I was like, let's get him in there again. I think he'll do such a wonderful job. I think the piece I'd love to see them tie in is, I think the tie-in I want Bo to make is you didn't get it, and you were the last person to get it. Bray had to show you a path of violence. You all the way didn't want to respect his power, his opportunity, his potential. And then he made you. And when we were about to show the world, our world got taken away. And so you need to be the one, and I need to be the one to come together to show these people what they were robbed of, and to help you finally realize what you were so close to for so long. And I think we set up, and I think that's where LA comes down. But I think I would like this to be pretty babyface. And listen, I know this might not where people want to see LA Knight take his title right away, but honestly, I think LA Knight is extremely popular, but I think his character needs a little redirect. I think we build to Bash at Berlin, and I think at Bash at Berlin, and this is going to tie back to what I have these other characters building to. I think we have Bo Dallas, Uncle Howdy, and I would do this. We're going to talk about how we would do these matches. I think for a long time we keep them straight up. That's another reason why I don't want them in full were just beasts tearing things apart right away. I think you got to build to that. So I think Bo's character is very much trying to do it the way he thinks Bray would have, right? Or at least that's what he's telling himself and telling us right away. So he's not going to that dark place. And he beats LA Knight at Bash at Berlin. And we get this moment where the Wyatt Sicks get this title, something that can show they're on the right direction, validate this group a little bit. And hopefully it'll be a very direct way of showing like this is why these people are believing in Bo. Like, look, it's working. Of course, it's working for him, but that's the buy-in. So I think we set that up. I think the promos to come, going through the different pieces. I think cult leader Bray. I think Bo touches on this idea, and it's going to be a twisted idea of like Bray wanted to bring people together. He didn't always know how to do that or say that in a way that gave people the choice that they deserved and needed. But now we've chosen to come together. This kind of twisted idea that what is this choice that they're in? And I think we get lines here from, I think you start with Gacy because I think Rowan is the emotional gut punch, and this could be kind of a vignette, but I think Gacy explains, and I would do this of like, I think Gacy's tie into the group is he felt called to be here because he wants to walk the path Bray walked. I think while other people maybe have this tie to Bray directly, I think for the people we didn't see that direct connection with, I think Gacy is going to maybe give us that tie-in of I want to chase what Bray meant to me. I don't necessarily want to chase the person, but think of what he was and what he could be. And I want to be like that. And Bo showing me how to get there. And someday I hope to have a flock of my own. I think you built to that. And the flock tie-in gives us Rowan. And I honestly, I think Rowan's not known for necessarily promo skills. And I think you have a chance with Rowan, and assuming he's okay with this in pieces, I think we get a simple, quick promo of my family meant everything to me. They're gone. And I think that's not only tied to Bray, it's a tie to Brody Lee, Luke Harper, who also in real life passed away. So I think we get a tie-in of and they will be remembered and they deserve. And I think that's the tie-in for him of, and I'd like him to almost be the moral backbone of this of like, I kind of have everyone else wanting to achieve something to prove it to Bray. And I feel like Rowan's tie-in is, this is where he's supposed to be. Like, I think Rowan is kind of chasing, like, I should have been next to him. And I wasn't able to be. And, in real life, they didn't hire me, wasn't able to be. So I think that tie-in of like, I won't leave another family. And I think that tie-in is really interesting to me. I think Loomis is tough. I honestly think you keep Loomis as the silent enforcer of the group. I think you have Dexter basically, I think, explaining. I think we cut to Eater of Worlds Brain. I think we get this drawing of a squid that he's drawn. And the next one, kind of a tie-in of like, I want like a family drawing, and that family, and a lot of people point this out, that like Loomis drew these families when he was kind of connecting to the way. And I think the simple connection for Loomis is, and I think you have Bo say this of like, there's many people who always wanted a family. Bray wanted to make a place where anyone could call home. Bray wanted, and again, the Eater of Worlds was a weird character. I think essentially what I want this vignette to be of like, no, we're gonna fuck some shit up. Like, this is gonna be the more intimidating one. And I think Loomis's piece in that is he is intimidating. I think we have that of like, if we could have gone the nice way, we would have. I think Loomis is a good example of that. I think Nikki Cross also being there with that is really important. I think you can have Nikki in only the way she can, and I'd have her talk but kind of ramble, but I basically be like, all the family and groups I've cared about, they've tried to take away from me. Not this time. I also want her character to, I loved the connection between her and Alexa. And so I almost think her connection is not to Bray, but it's to Alexa. And I think talking to that piece of my sister Abigail, called me here and the world will burn for not recognizing her. So I think Nikki and Alexa almost go on their own path through this. And after this first build up to LA, I'm just going to kind of give a wide swath for where this goes from here. So that's how come I'm planting so many seeds here. And don't worry, I'm going to talk about what LA Knight says to all this in a second. But that last vignette right before the pay-per-view, and there's obviously been some back and forth to this point, I think LA Knight's cutting a promo. We get the Firefly Funhouse response, and I think Bo starts us off. He's in the sweater. He's giving I think he starts the talk, and I think what I found as I've thought about it to be most powerful is this one he can't do. Like, I think this for some reason is like where his emotion stops him, and I think the camera, like the music's going, it's a kid show, and I feel like you hear him say cut, and he goes, because this is the other piece of it, like Uncle Howdy wasn't messing with all the reform stuff that Bray was doing when they were doing that storyline. I think here's the piece where it's like Bray was doing Firefly Funhouse stuff, and I think you just have a moment of Bo kind of like, in actuality still in character, but saying cut and then being like, I don't know how he could be nice. I don't know how he turned on this part of himself. Because I think this is the part for Bo that he almost like is going to build to, which is Bray, even at his most twisted and possibly most, insane, which is the Firefly Funhouse piece. He was trying to educate and trying to show a better path. And he's like, I don't know how at his lowest he did that. And then I think we hear a knock on the door. The music comes back, and I think it's Alexa Bliss in full Sister Abigail. And I think there we get kind of the tie-in, and she almost sets up this next piece, which is I think Alexa's thing in this is she was almost there with Bray the whole time. And I think her kind of storyline is she's been truly neglected in WWE. And I think her storyline is I would have given up all of my achievements and everything to stay with him. Like, he valued me, he protected me, he gave me more power than I could imagine. And my lesson today is about loyalty and payback. And I think she ties in the idea of he now has in his charity given me a chance to succeed. And so I'm going to make the most of that. And he'd want you to do that too. And I think in this first Firefly Funhouse, instead of educating the viewer, she's educating Bo. And I think we get, at first, I want this group to be very synergized, very like Bo is helping everyone, but they're kind of helping him. And I think darkness is going to fade from some of them faster than others. And I think Bo will be last. And I think you start by having them prop up Bo, and Bo goes on to beat LA Knight. LA Knight's part in all this, I think he achieved, but I want his storyline basically in this, like his bravado cannot be replaced. So I like let him be funny, like let him make the jokes. Like they're gonna look like a bunch of goons. So yeah, go nuts. A lot of good pot shots you could throw out there. I think he can start to poke at like you're just wannabes, like you're not Bray. But I think the part he's going to stumble into is they know that. I think they're not trying to be Bray, or at least not at this point. I think Bo maybe gets there. But right now, they'll say this, I'm trying to do the impossible. We are trying to live up to the unreplicable. No one can be Bray, but we're fireflies trying to get close to the light. And I think LA Knight reckoning with, again, having to wrestle with these things that he was so good at being like, why am I dealing with a demon? Like that storyline was so funny to me of like, this guy's just a hotshot. Like he literally like the jock in a horror movie who cannot reckon with like, you're going to punch the quarterback. Like, so I think that, but I would like the tagline that we build to be, and because I see LA Knight as a bookend kind of in this, because I think he'd be so good for it. I want to give him some direction too. I think we maybe have him reckon with, I wish Bray was here. Like I've stayed here and like Bray built me up. And I think we have Bo point this out in different things. And like, would I be here without Bray? Now, I just won this title that his brother wants. Like, shouldn't he have it? And I think that conflict gets him. I think he loses. I think we get a rematch between the two with a stipulation at the next pay-per-view afterward, Crown Jewel. And I would have LA Knight kind of written off after that. I think in that stipulation match, maybe what you do, because this be fun, I'd have him kind of go through members of have him go through Loomis and Gacy uh, before getting to a rematch with Bo. And I think you do that for a couple reasons. I think you need to give them places to go. I think it's okay to have layers to this. So I would have LA Knight beat Loomis pretty handedly. Like, he's there to do some damage, but he's not there to win. I think Loomis loses and is very unbothered. I think Loomis is building, and that's where I'm going to end with this. So there's just sneak peek, but Loomis is building to being more than just a bit player, a role player. And so he's the enforcer in this. So I think he builds. I think Gacy, who I see being kind of more connected to Rowan in this, I see them as a tag team, but I think he gets very close to beating LA Knight. I think we see Gacy tempted to cheat, and he kind of go down that path of, will he be the one that turns eventually on folks? I'd like that to be twisted. And does he have Rowan eventually get involved? But he doesn't here, and that hesitation costs him. But LA Knight's really being up. And then I think LA Knight is set to face Bo Dallas. And then I think we get a spooky squash. I would have Bo at that point come out like in a rage at what he's done to his partners. And I think the build up to that match is almost like, at what lengths are you going to go to deny other people opportunities? And he almost can't take this. Like, at what point is LA Knight's pride worth it? And I think that sets Bo off. I think Bo comes out in full Howdy gear. Because listen, squashes can only happen so much. And what's the reasoning? I think the fact that it was going to be just another Bo, let's have it be an Extreme Rules or Falls Count Anywhere match. Give it a real stipulation that we know what's going to look like. I think that's important. But it was going to have a stipulation. It's going to be that night. So I would say LA Knight's gone through one match on the SmackDown before. He went through one match earlier that day with Gacy. And now later in the show, he's exhausted. He's about to go against Bo. And then Bo comes out the awesome Uncle Howdy gear we saw from the tribute video documentary about Bray, and he cleans the floor with them. And I think we see the other folks a little scared about what this means for Bo. I also think this is a turn in Bo's character after this point, where I think to this point, like, this is what they're going for, this power, this ability to be noticed, and you can't be ignored. So I think Bo will let this get to his head a little bit. I don't necessarily though want him to embrace it. Like, I want him to be like, no, of course, that's not what we want. I mean, it worked. And so I think he kind of leans into it that way. And I think the other folks have to wrestle with, is that the place we need to be willing to go to? And they kind of wrestle with that. So I think that's our first feud. I think that leads us to Survivor Series, which is where you had this big return. I think we need something big there. And so this is where I kind of have my fantasy booking ending, because I think at this point you have them established. I'm going to give you their directions. But War Games is hard to pass up. Everyone's been talking about, do you do Bloodline War Games? I think that's awesome. I feel like that might be a little rushed to have Roman surrounded on the side by someone from the Bloodline at this point. Feels like a lot, unless you do what I'm kind of thinking, which is, I would say at this point, the route I would go is, we've had tag team shenanigans leading up to Survivor Series. We get a mini-sode almost of these forces that can't be contained. And I would have Bloodline where it's Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, Solo and Roman, who thinks he's in on the group, in on the joke. Like, oh yeah, they were, trying to be cool without me, but I'm back. Like I'm part of the group, of course. And they're stepping up to the Wyatt Sicks, which I think would be the four guys involved. And so I think basically here we have this juxtaposition. I know it feels a little random, but I think you could have some really cool lead up to it. I did a fantasy booking a while back, and I just love this time with Bray and Roman. And I want to call back to anyone but you. Like I know that they took that feud in such a weird direction, but I really think there was something there to, if they are the antithesis of these people who are promoted and put up, I think the call to Roman and the bloodline is, why was it never Bray's turn? Why was it always had to be you? And I think they recognize that. And I think you get some times there of the bloodline doesn't think it's Roman. So I think we get some juxtaposition of Bo and these other members calling out, it is our time. And well, I don't think they're as big as the bloodline. You put them over because, of course, in this match, I think we get a betrayal, and I think the bloodline leaves Roman. And I think Roman going down to his sister Abigail is a cool visual. Them in the cages with the callbacks to Bray and Daniel Bryan's feud, I think is an awesome visual. And that's where I see us kind of building. And then what do you see long term? By the way, any ideas you have in the comments, any feedback you have is appreciated. Here's where I see each of these characters going. So starting with the one I have the least potential and hope for, my goal for Dexter Lumis in this is that he's kind of one of his own, but I like the idea of a character in WWE that his goal in the group, he's the one who just wants to be in a family and like belong. And I think he'll kind of be taken under the wing of Rowan a little bit. Like what Rowan passes to him is that, I think maybe Rowan, if he's willing to, like winking, nodding, being like, I wasn't always shoulder tapped to be the one in our family who got the limelight or got the shine. But when my brothers did, I wish I would have been better at keeping them in that light. And I think that's what Lumis gets to, I think, long term, finding groups for him to be in and just having him feel like his character can exist in the way that's not so stalker, not so spooky, but is more just like he cannot articulate. Like he's a creepy, spooky dude and he wants to be part of a group, but of course he's going to find himself in these type of groups. I think where that group comes from could be what we see out of, I think Gacy. I see Gacy, Lumis, and Rowan eventually breaking apart separately. I think Gacy is leader, and Gacy maybe taking, as Bo is trying to figure this out and figure out what his brother wanted for himself and maybe wanted for Bo. I think Gacy is maybe taking, quote unquote, some of the wrong lessons from heel Bray back in the day. Like the point is having a group, and like if we were alone, we wouldn't have that power. Gacy's so good at some of the shtick, and I think just like we know the cult leader Bray character works, and I think finding a way to very poetically give that to Gacy is cool. I think Gacy getting that, and I think Gacy will think like, yes, I'm bringing out my own, and I think it'll be Lumis and Rowan who eventually they stay with him because they want to stay in a group and want to stay together, but eventually they also help guide him. I think eventually Gacy learns the lesson of like even the shepherd needs to be led once in a while, and I think that turn to equality at some point helps. I think Rowan's path in all of this is I think he's part of a group. I think eventually what I would love for this is Rowan gets to a place where he's like, I did it, buddy. Like I made sure that your idea like took off. I made sure that like even after you were gone, what you wanted to happen got accomplished. I think back to Rowan as part of like even the Daniel Bryan eco terrorist character, basically. He was so good there. And like when he buys in, I really do believe him. And I think he's got so much real life buy-in now as a character that I think you can tell a really cool story. I think eventually the story I want from him is like maybe that group brings in Braun or he goes with Braun. That would be the tie-in I have, is like I think Rowan now takes some of the good out of what Bray is, and his thing is like, what is each character getting? And while I've mentioned that with Loomis and Gacy, I think for Rowan, it's like he's saying goodbye, and I think him and Strowman eventually coming together and being like, we're what we've got left. Like, let's stick together. Could be a cool tag team run until Rowan's ready to hang him up or do something else. I know he's not that old, but it just feels like they're going to like crop him out eventually. But I would love to see him in tag team action more. I think he's underrated and phenomenal. I think him being a part of a tag team with Gacy and them having title runs where Rowan's trying to seize a lot of old Bray, and Gacy is both afraid but drawn to that is a cool idea to me. And I think eventually helping Braun get back on that horse and like them dominating is a cool thought to possibly go down. By the way, Braun getting tied in through that or Alexa's is very cool ideas to me. I think we go Nikki next. My idea for Nikki is again, I think Nikki's in this group because she was abandoned, she was left, and I think her character's always been like unhinged, but I think the cool part when her character was like working on all cylinders is people didn't listen to her, but she was usually right. Like she had a good read on people. She understood what was happening and she just went about it in unorthodox ways. I think she's loyal to Alexa in this. And so I think helping Alexa eventually leave the group and be like, you've done all you can for Bray. And what Bray would want now is for you to be like the queen. And then I think when Alexa goes Little Miss Bliss down the line and she's, whole again after this experience, I think having her feud with Nikki in a way of like, let's see what we've both become is cool. I think in this storyline, like what I would like for that dynamic is I think Nikki is committed to getting Alexa the belt. And I think in the midst of that, as Alexa becomes this, she realizes that Nikki might be better. Like you almost have this, like Nikki's not going to betray Alexa. She's committed to supporting and helping, but Alexa doesn't know that. And like, I think you could do it one of two ways. Do you have Alexa turn on Nikki? That leaves the group and she tries to shun this lesson she's learned. Or do you have, Nikki basically be so committed to the Wyatt Sicks and to this idea of rebirth that I think Bray represents in a lot of ways, that she kind of and Alexa come together and they overcome that. I'd like to see them together for as long as possible. I think they could exist out. This group is just like kind of a faction. Like they're just always going to be friends. They're always going to be on the same side. I also just think the goal for Nikki is she is unhinged. And I think Bray represents a character that like, that is always going to be a piece of that. So I think getting her into these wild, crazy matches where she's basically the enforcer on the female side, but in a way where I don't want Loomis in matches. I want him just like running and beating people up. I want like you talk to Alexa wrong or you are disparaging or unsure about this path and Nikki puts you through a table. Like, let's do a hardcore match right now. I think there's a lot of stock there. So I think just getting that over for Nikki, but I could see if everyone else is changing, I think Nikki's storyline being, I've realized I don't need to change, and that's okay, is a cool nugget to have in there. I think Alexa's storyline is a mix of, if Bo's storyline is going to be how could I ever move on and how could I ever live up to Bray, I think Alexa's eventual thing will be similar, but I think she maybe is more aware of that than Bo is. And I think her piece is just going to be helping other people get there. But I think also eventually, again, getting into her own character, that Little Miss Bliss. Like, I think she's good with the spooky stuff, but I think how do you tie those two characters together? I think eventually having her be more like a queen or like Queen Abby or something, like, I don't know, Queen of the World, some shadow queen, I don't know. But I think you go a route with Alexa where Alexa, I think, gets the world title in this group. I don't see that for Bo, not for a long time. I think Bo, I haven't mentioned other stuff, and I will, what I kind of see his direction in a second, but I think Bo's great on the stick. I think Bo can kind of be a leader in these spaces. And I like him in the ring all right. But I think if Bo is going to get to the next step, he has to build up. Alexa's there. And so I think Alexa's storyline being Bray did believe in me. And you all should have too. And Nikki believes in me. And like her conflicted with, am I going to let Nikki down? Should it be Nikki? Is cool. And I think this is cheesy. And I think maybe she helps Bo. And then after everything happens, Bo eventually helps Alexa be like, he believed in you. Everyone believes in you. Do you believe in you? And I think that is the false bravado we saw so much with early Alexa and Miss Bliss character. And I think a true bravado there is cool, and you can go a lot of directions. I think, and this is the whole storyline here, how does this group eventually break up? I think it all comes down to Bo and Uncle Howdy. I think you have natural drama here of like they were feuding. They were kind of feuding, Bray and Bo, in storyline. And I think that eats away at Bo a little bit. I would see his character progression as he eventually is giving more and more into this dark side. I think you could in storyline be like, he can't go to that dark place like Bray could. I think the group brings that out of him, different pieces. But I also think this is cheesy, but I think the piece there is he's able to go to that dark place when he is doing it for good reasons or believes in it. But if he's just going to do it to like take advantage of others or to manipulate or to kind of promote those worst parts of himself, it will only eventually harm him. And I think other people eventually leaving the group or Gacy kind of being like, oh, isn't he lost in then doing some of those similar things is an interesting path. But I think eventually what I see for Bo is what I hoped they were going with Bray, which is these are parts of myself, but I will not let them define me. And I think the hard part for that will him is I think you have to with this storyline. This is what I kind of like about this group. I think this can exist in a lot of ways for a long time, but I would give this, I want this wrapped up in next year's Survivor Series. And I think we get Bo versus Braun is who I would do. And I think Bo thinks he's got to go to this dark place to beat Braun, who's gotten close to Rowan and other pieces of the group. And I think we have Bo discover that like it's not worth it. Like, or beat him by being himself, Bo leaving. I think getting back closer to that character. And I want his real thing to be, I've realized I can't do enough to be Bray. I can't do enough to bring him back. If I could, I would. But otherwise, all of this it's a tribute, but it's not him. And for now, I got to let that go. I think you can bring that back in different storylines, but I would love, like, that's what Bray was going for, right? Is like Bray wanted to win a match where what he won was, self-love. And how weird that was is like a character to the piece. And it's like his worst enemy was always himself. And I think Bo realizing that, but then having to tie it in with like, well, if I am not this character, what does that mean for Bray? And like, I have to stay this character. And I think that's a cool thing. And we get the real realization at some point, one way or another. And I think between Alexa and Braun, you could get there of Bray's whole thing was feeling trapped, but wanting to set other people free. And he wouldn't want you to be caged up by his memory. And so I think you could do a lot of cool things with this group. That would be what I do. So first video like this for us. So if you have any suggestions, things you want to see, look forward to hearing them. I, want big things for the Wyatt Sicks. I think we're getting it very soon. And I hope in the build up to them coming, we do a good job of tying it to Bray in a way. That would be my whole goal for this group of like, the goal is to remember Bray by getting these people over. It is not just to pay tribute to Bray. So I think that's from everything we've heard and seen what he was going for and wanted of, and why I want to. Oh, and by the way, I said Braun, you definitely end by him losing the title and have him going a long reign tonight. And LA Knight, sorry, I had that written down and I just saw it again. You'd have LA Knight come back, win, his storyline there being like, I have earned it. I had to double check, but I've earned it now. Don't you have to like wouldn't he want you to do other things? Like you're the one now who's living in the shadow and living that lie that I was maybe a year ago. So I think you have that nice book close. It's also why I want it to be LA Knight to start. I know that's a weird place, but give him a little bit of a reset, and then I think you can push him to the moon again. Now that the timing might be better for LA. And mostly I just think as much as this is a weird collection of people, I think they're right that I want to see this group get over. Like, honestly, I don't know if that like Bo because of his connection to Bray, but he was so good as Bo Dallas. Like, I would like to see him get over. I don't know if there's two people in the whole company I'd like to see them use better than Nikki and Alexa. So, give us more of that. But in the meantime, yes, have them go for titles and pieces, and that's fine. Not too spooky, not too fast, and yeah, maybe stick away from gimmick matches as long as you can. But in the meantime, you all out there, stay spooky. Let's hope the storyline goes good. And until next time, what's your fantasy?